Hey guys, Brian here with Better Chess Training. And in today's video, I'm going to start a new series called The Principles of Better Chess Training. And the idea here will be to highlight one principle that you can apply to the way you study and train. And why don't we just get into it? The first principle is directness. And basically, directness means that training should be similar to the aspect of the performance you are trying to improve. Now, this may seem obvious to some of you, but I also, read a lot about different people doing different things, train to try to improve. That doesn't necessarily apply to this principle. But let's look at a few examples, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you can apply this to your games and your training. Okay, like the first example here, solving tactical problems to improve tactical recognition is better than studying theoretical. And this is the idea here is to highlight that, and this is maybe an obvious one, that if you want to improve a certain aspect, you want to do activities that are related to that aspect. So, of course, studying theoretical endgames is important for your training, but may not be very helpful for your tactical recognition. Although some theoretical endgames do include tactics. So I'm not trying to. Don't come back and say, "Well, there's tactics in these in these endgames too." That is true, but studying, say, 1,000 problems from chess exercises for beginning players, I think would be more effective because drilling specific tactic tactical themes over and over. And this overlaps with other principles. So I kind of want to stick to the directness. So I kind of wanted to give very obvious. Here's another one. To improve calculation, solving positions where you do not already know the answer is better than solving position games that you are familiar with. For example, using endgame studies. And the reason I want to mention this is that let's say, sometimes you'll be solving tactical problems or say checkmate problems. I'll give an example from my own practice is, if you've studied a lot of the classic games, some of the well-known tactical motifs, for example, the from the Opera House game, at Queen Sacrifice. As soon as you see that, you're going to recognize it. Now, obviously, practicing those are important for different aspects. But if you're trying to improve your calculation, you want to use positions where you're going to have to look at different branches of look forward, and that you don't necessarily recognize the theme right away. And this is one of the uh, great benefits of endgame studies, although eventually there's some pattern recognition there as well. But typically, they're moves that aren't um, always obvious or don't always follow a specific tactical theme right away. So it does force you to look forward. It does force you to look at different alternatives, and therefore improving your calculation even more. This third example is again, may seem a little obvious, but studying games within your opening repertoire is better than at improving your opening repertoire than studying games outside of your opening. So this does play into another aspect. For example, if you are, Bobby Fischer is one of my favorite players, and what I've done recently is I have a couple books with his games, one by Andrew Soltis, and of course 60 memorable games. And what I've been doing lately, because I'm learning a new opening repertoire, some of it overlaps with Bobby Fischer's repertoire, for example, Nydorf, as well as the Sozin variation with white. And so I will look for those games and study those first. Now, there is, of course, a benefit to studying other games. For example, the instructive value for a positional play or for endgame or other aspects. But for specifically using your opening repertoire, you want to look for games that match up with your opening repertoire. This could annotated games, of course, are good, and this is why good opening books should include, at least in my opinion, should include model games, especially for getting up to master. You want to have games where the author explains the middle game and game themes that may show up commonly in your opening repertoire. So what how can you apply directness to your training game? And what I would say is that you want to try to do these three things. You want to identify some type of training purpose before the game. So, of course, this involves some self awareness. What are your weaknesses? Do you, for example, do you not check for tactics before you make a move? So, you may want to say, on each of my moves, I'm going to check all of the forcing moves, checks, captures, and threats. I want to check that before I make a move. And then, if it's a training game, you can maybe have a little on your score sheet. I know you're not supposed to keep notes in tournament games, but for training, you might want to keep a little check mark, by each move where you do that, and that'll help. There, you're developing the habit of doing that. Once that becomes a habit, maybe you don't need to practice it as directly. During the game, you want to be mindful of that, like I said, make check marks, and then afterwards, look at, did I improve this, or over several games? Maybe the first game you do it, you only do it half the time, and maybe you lose by a blunder or something like that. So the point is, the result of the game is not necessarily what you're looking for. I mean, you want to win, of course, but you want to assess the progress on that specific task. And I've talked about this before in another one of my videos. We're talking about training intention. So maybe I'll put a link to that down below. But the idea, though, is that you can use your games to apply directness in order to improve certain aspects of your game. And then the next one is a favorite, I think, of a lot of chess improvers. It's coming up with ways to improve, developing your drills. And stuff. I like that too. And so the main thing there you want to do is you want to identify the element that you want to improve. So if you want to improve your calculation, then make sure you're selecting a task. Like I said, endgame studies is a great one for me, where, or maybe difficult tactics, look like forcing moves or difficult tactics, where you're going to do that. If you want to improve your end game play, for example, to look at the games of Capablanca, but maybe skip ahead to move 30, then maybe play guess the move or solitary chess with the rest of that, or maybe play that position against an engine. These are just examples, and then compare that to the game itself and what plans that Capablanca used. You can really, this is the part I think that a lot of chess players find creative and fun, is to come up with these different improving. But you want to make sure that the drill itself, you want to ask yourself critically, does this actually improve what I'm trying to improve? Now, you might want to say, I have a lot of things I'm trying to improve. So obviously, things like studying endgames or endgame studies is going to improve more than just your calculation. Same thing with a training game. It's going to improve a lot of aspects of your chess, but you want to maybe identify what you want to directly focus on during a specific game. Because if you try to focus on everything at the same time when you're trying to improve, it can be difficult mentally to keep all of that. And I'm going to give you an example from a friend of mine from years ago. We used to talk about this, and he would switch his openings to try to improve his play. For example, um, he started playing the English so he could improve his pawn play. Now, the problem with that the aspect that he's trying to improve, yes, in the English, you might come up with a lot of different pawn structures that you can say that about most openings. But what happens is that um, by using the opening as a way to improve that aspect of your play, there's too many factors involved. Like, how many times are you going to get into positions where you have an opportunity to prove that? Maybe more specifically, it might be more direct to find a book about constructors, and there's a lot of great ones out there. You have a specific opening. A lot of times, for example, chess structures. Great, more recent book talks about the basically the pawn structures and how to play, and with a lot of examples from different openings. I'll put a link to that book too down below, just since I mentioned it. But the idea that by applying directness, or if you assess that plan by directness, you might say, well, I might do something else. I mean, there's nothing wrong with playing the English opening, but to do it specifically, train on play may not be the most direct way of doing it. Again, maybe to supplement, but and how many times you're going to actually get a chance to do that. It's like saying, well, during my basketball game, let's say you play basketball. During my basketball game, I practice the pick and roll with my, you know, and how many opportunities you're going to have to do that during a specific game. Whereas maybe if you drill it outside of the game, you're going to get a little more direct practice. Of course, during the game, just like I said here with training games, you have opportunities to do that, but you want to assess your actual ability to train what you want to train during whatever activity you are doing. So that is directness. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video, hit that like button and come back, look for future installments of this series. Also, I just started streaming on Twitch recently, and so check out my stream Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.